Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Garage Game Day Sports Podcast. My name is Louie. I'm your host. We had quite an eventful week 2 of the college football season. We're going to talk some results, some big shockers, big movers in our rankings. I want to break down a few of the games, give my personal top 10 Garage Game Day Sports rankings. We post them online, so if you want to check them out, the entire top 25 will go into the top 10, and then a little look forward into this week's college football games. But before we get started, feel free to drop us a like, drop us a comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow Garage Game Day Sports on X or Twitter, and check us out on any and all podcast feeds. Wherever you get your podcast, pop us in the car, in the house, let us know what you think of the show. So, Texas went down to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama. I picked Alabama in this game, and I was what we call hedging our bets. I was either going to be right and Alabama won, or I would have gladly taken the L and Texas win because the Longhorns are my team if you can't see by the banner above. So I was very happy to take the L here. Texas goes into Tuscaloosa, beats Alabama 34-24. Bama drops into the tail end of the top 10 for most people. Texas climbs into the top 5 by virtue of this win. Quinn Ewers looked magnificent in this game. Threw a very pretty deep ball. He got his receivers involved. I know Xavier Worthy had a couple of key drops. He dropped a touchdown early in the game, made up for it later with another touchdown. We saw A.D. Mitchell, the kid from Georgia. Jordan Whittington made some plays. Isaiah Naylor made some plays. Of course, we saw the running game with Jonathan Brooks, C.J. Baxter. But I want to give big ups, big props to the offensive and defensive lines. These guys showed up to play. They controlled the line of scrimmage, controlled tempo, kept Bama on their heels the entire time. Now, we saw some sputters at the beginning from the defensive line. I saw Jace McClellan, and the Alabama running game was getting going on the first drive or two, and I was thinking, here we go. Texas is going to need to win the battles in the trenches to come out on top, and then after that, they clamped down. Bama was at about 100 yards, 110 yards rushing, and they stayed that way for most of the game, for the rest of the game. And Texas really turned up the heat offensively and defensively. They had Jalen Milroe on its heels. They had him scrambling, and I know Milroe works best, I think, when he's having to improvise and scramble out of the pocket. And it seems like a lot of Alabama's plays were either Jalen Milroe scrambles or the deep ball, which Bama did burn Texas on one occasion with a 49-yard strike through the air that gave Bama the lead in the fourth quarter. Texas was able to overcome that. I was very impressed in the fourth quarter with how the Longhorns responded. Past Texas teams probably would have mailed it in or would have led to a comedy of errors, and the Longhorns would have shot themselves in the foot and really shot themselves out of this game. Texas responded with a long touchdown, an interception of Milroe, and another touchdown to put them up 27-16. They never looked back. Very key win for Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns. Big win. Spoiler alert, I have them not just in my top 5, I have them a little higher than number 5. But we'll talk about that in a little while. So big win for the Longhorns. I think their hardest game of their schedule. So if they don't play down to their competition, the sky's the limit for the Texas Longhorns as far as the Big 12 goes. Alabama takes a loss here. They might have to go perfect the rest of the way for a shot at the college football playoff. We'll see how that shakes out. They've got games with LSU, A&M, and then, of course, the SEC championship game if they get that far. I want to talk Colorado and Nebraska. Colorado was another big mover this week. They moved up. They impressed me. After a shaky start, it was 0-0 after the first quarter. They got on the board twice in the second quarter. It wasn't over by any means, and then the offense really got cooking. Shedeur Sanders, 393 through the air, 2 touchdowns, getting guys involved. Now this week it was Xavier Weaver who was the big beneficiary through the air. 170 yards, 10 catches, and a touchdown. And Colorado has the offense. And I know Nebraska, not the strongest team offensively. Colorado beat them 36-14. We saw how they struggled last week against Minnesota. 13-10 loss where they repeatedly shot themselves in the foot, and that's the Nebraska special. They lose a ton of close games. Well, Colorado didn't give them the chance to lose a close game because Colorado blew them away in the third and fourth quarters. We talk about Weaver having his big game, Xavier Weaver at wide receiver. But you got so many weapons. You got just Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball. Dylan Edwards at running back. So Jimmy Horn at wide receiver. So there's just so many weapons that are stepping up. Shadur Sanders making some key plays. He's over 900 yards passing on the season through 2 games. That's just wild. So I know the schedule's going to tighten up a bit. You're getting Colorado State this week. That should be another easy win. So another a feather in the cap for Coach Prime. But then it tightens up a lot. You get Oregon and USC, I believe, back-to-back weeks after the Colorado State game. So we're really going to see this Colorado team get tested defensively because we know what they bring on offense. We know the capabilities that they have on offense. It's the defensive limitations. So we need to see what this defense can do, what adjustments they can make. We can really see what this team is made of once Oregon and USC step on the field with the Buffs. But in the meantime, huge win for Colorado. They continue to move up the rankings and continue to be major talking points by everyone in the college football world. Ole Miss beating Tulane 37-20. They knocked the Green Wave out of the top 25. Michael Pratt, of course, didn't play in this game. He was a late scratch from injury sustained last week over South Alabama. So they turned to their backup quarterback. Ole Miss was able to take care of things. Jackson Dart made some plays. And they were really able to they weren't able to get a lot done against Tulane's experienced offensive and defensive lines. Tulane brought back a ton of experience and a ton of production from last year. And Ole Miss wasn't really able to get Quinshon Judkins going. He had 18 carries for 48 yards. His long was only a 12-yard run, so they kept him bottled up for the majority of the time. Jackson Dart did make some plays, but I think this is a game now. Granted, Ole Miss was missing some players. I think they're missing a tight end, offensive lineman, and Zachary Franklin, the kid from UTSA, transfer wide receiver, has not played this year so far. So they were missing pieces, but I do think Tulane would have won this game had Michael Pratt been playing and been healthy. So I didn't move Ole Miss up a ton, and I dropped Tulane out of my top 25. Also gotta drop them by virtue of the loss. But with Michael Pratt not in the game, I didn't ding them too bad. So they are somewhere between my 26 and 30 ranked teams. So they're kind of like the last 4 in if you're looking at college basketball terms. But Ole Miss made enough plays. They control the line of scrimmage, and Dart made plays. So we're really going to see what Ole Miss is made of once they get into their SEC West slate. But Tulane took a loss. And one of many G5 teams, by the way, to be taking losses. UTSA already has one. They lost to Houston. They got Tennessee coming up on the schedule. Boise State's 0-2. So you really don't know the G5 team that's going to step up right now. And it may end up being Tulane once Pratt comes back. But in the meantime, there could be a handful of contenders. UTSA, Fresno's 2-0, Wyoming's 2-0. It remains to be seen what teams will step up in the G5 ranks. But Notre Dame beating NC State 45-24. I thought this was a very good win for the Irish. Their first 2 wins were, walkovers. It was Navy. They utterly dominated Navy. Tennessee State, not really. They could have beat them by 60, and too many people wouldn't have batted an eye. But I'm looking at the play of Sam Hartman. He carved up that Wolfpack defense. NC State has a pretty good defense, and Hartman did whatever he wanted to. He's got 10 touchdowns, no picks on the season, very efficient, completing 75% of his passes. So I look at it from this perspective. Notre Dame has needed a quarterback for a long time. Sam Hartman has needed a defense for a long time. If you remember his days at Wake Forest, he was having to constantly shoot the team out, get the team out via shootout. He was having to shoot them out of games and really having to outscore teams. So now that he has a defense, he's not really needing to do that, but he's doing it anyway. And he's looked impressive through 3 games. He's on my Heisman watch list. Now I know the schedule's going to get tougher. You got USC, you've got other games coming up, Clemson. So, and of course, Ohio State, I think in 2 weeks. So we'll really see what Hartman's made out of, once he gets those games under his belt. But in the meantime, Notre Dame really looks like a top 10 team. The defense is there. Hartman's making throws. He's getting his guys involved. Marcus Freeman, no hiccups like there was at the beginning of last season. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing from the Fighting Irish. They are in my top 10. I'll get to those rankings in just a bit after we talk about our last game. Miami over Texas A&M, 48-33. After last year's stinker that saw A&M win 17-9, a total of 26 points last year, we get 81 between the two teams this year. More offense than defense, I'll tell you that, and a ton of errors. Very sloppy, undisciplined play on both sides of the ball from both teams. But Tyler Van Dyke went off, and if we see this version of Tyler Van Dyke, the same version of TVD that we saw in 2021, Miami could be players in the ACC. Especially Clemson seemed to falling off here. Duke had, of course, the blowout win over Clemson. North Carolina's playing good, and of course, Florida State seems to be the gold standard right now in the ACC. Miami could be the number 2 team easily, and could maybe even challenge Florida State if Tyler Van Dyke plays the way he did. 374 through the air, 5 touchdowns, carved up that very suspect A&M secondary. Connor Wegman had a decent game for Texas A&M, 2 touchdowns, but did have 2 picks. Now, granted, they weren't really his fault. The first one wasn't really his fault, and the second one was desperation time. They were trying to come back, and he threw a late touchdown trying to bring the Aggies back. But I was very impressed by Miami. I think Miami could have won this game by even more. A&M was sloppy. Miami was sloppy. Lots of penalties, lots of errors on both sides, and Texas A&M showed me that their secondary needs major work if they want to contend or even come close to contending in the SEC West. They've got to clean that up. And Miami burned them for several big plays. I think you had a 49-yard touchdown strike. You had over a 60-yard touchdown strike. So A&M's definitely got to clean up that part of the defense. But big shout out to Miami. They cracked the top 25. They're in my top 25 rankings, as they're probably in most teams. Very big win for the Hurricanes. So I look to see bigger things from Mario Cristobal and the Canes coming in to this week. My top 3. Now, I have Georgia and Michigan staying at 1 and 2. This is partly a strength of your team and how you look last season coming into this year. Of course, Georgia, the unquestioned number 1, back-to-back national champs. Michigan, as much as they brought back, very good quarterback in McCarthy, 2 dynamic running backs, maybe the best running back duo in the country, and lost in the college football playoff semifinal by 1 score. So number 1 and number 2, not much changing there. As the season goes on and we start shifting more from team strength and overall team, then you start valuing the resume wins. So my teams, number 3 and number 4, you see those resume wins, you see those quality wins that they picked up so far in the season carry a lot of weight. As we go on further into the season, we're going to start seeing a little more shifting resume based. What have you done lately? What have you done this season as opposed to what did you do last year and the type of production you're bringing back? But my number 3 team is Texas. The Longhorns at number 3, they have the best win of anybody this year. It could be the best win of any team in the country this season. We don't know. But going into Tuscaloosa, that is not easy. They were 52-1 in their previous, I want to say probably, or their last 53 games in Tuscaloosa. Steve Sarkisian, Quinn Ewers, and the Longhorns go up and serve a big L to Bama in Tuscaloosa by 10 points, and you could make a case that this could have been worse. The Worthy drop, other penalties, and errors that could have swung it Longhorns' way, and you could make a case Alabama had the same thing. But to go into Tuscaloosa, beat them by double digits, that has not been done in a long time. And the way Quinn Ewers and that offense looked, I've got questions for Alabama. I got questions about wide receiver. I got questions about their lines. The way Texas looked, those lines looked dominant. So Texas looks like clearly the team to beat in the Big 12. They look like a college football playoff contender, and they have the best win out of anybody so far. Florida State's got to be number 4. They have the second best win. I know they blew out LSU. You could say, well, they blew out LSU, but it was also in Florida, which is basically a home game for Florida State. So I'll ding them a little there, but it's still a very impressive win, what they were able to do from LSU and pull away from the Tigers in the second half of that game. I put them at number 4. USC, I have them jumping Ohio State for number 5. Now, USC has played suspect competition. Ohio State has too. USC's put up a ton of points. I know they needed to pull away in the second half from San Jose State. They did that, and then they ran up the score against Nevada. I think it was 66-14, something like that. While Ohio State looked lackluster against Indiana, only scoring 23 points, and they didn't look impressive against Youngstown. So both of those teams will strengthen their resume down the road, but from what I've seen so far, I like USC a little bit more, so give me USC 5, Ohio State 6. Washington at number 7, I debated I debated a lot whether to jump Ohio State with Washington as well, because Washington blitzed Boise State in week 1, 56-19. Penix and crew were able to do whatever they wanted through the air. And I still think Boise State, even though they took another loss in week 2, I think that's what kept me from pushing Washington past Ohio State. I still think Boise State is a big player in the Mountain West. They could be a player for the college football playoff if they're able to figure things out. It's early to tell right now, but Washington's my number 7 team because of their resume, what they've been able to do, and they look dominant doing it. Number 8's Penn State. Drew Aller seems to be settling in. I love this team. The running backs, Aller at quarterback, the lines, they haven't totally blown people away, but of course they've got the Michigan and Ohio State games coming up, and I really like Penn State, just what they've been able to do. Dominate teams, suffocate teams defensively. They're my number 8 team. I talk about Notre Dame. I contemplated jumping Penn State with Notre Dame too, but Notre Dame's number 9. What they've been able to do, shutting down Navy, overwhelming NC State and carving up that pretty decent Wolfpack defense. They've got to be my number 9 team. I jumped them very easily over my number 10 team, and my number 10 team is Alabama. And I could probably have put them lower. I probably would have put them lower had Oregon not struggled with Texas Tech. Had they not done that, and they did get a quality win in Lubbock, but if they had not struggled and been behind for a chunk of that game, I probably would put Oregon at 10 here. But I will put Alabama because I think they figure things out. They have still a stout offensive and defensive line. They did overwhelm Middle Tennessee. So I have them at number 10 right now. But if other teams play up to their competition or play up and above their competition, like Utah, Oregon, Tennessee, I can easily see any of them jumping Alabama for that 10 spot. So those are my top 10. You can catch the rest of my top 25 on Twitter and on Facebook. I'll be posting those today. And then also we'll be back later in the week discussing number 14 LSU at Mississippi State, Minnesota at number 20 North Carolina. That's one I want to watch. Number 8 Washington. I'm curious to see if they get tested by a Michigan State team that got rocked by a scandal. You know, they fired Mel Tucker, their head coach. We'll see how the Spartans come out when they host the Huskies. Number 11 Tennessee traveling to the Swamp to take on Florida. And then Penn State, number 7 in the country, going to take on the Illinois Fighting Illini. So we'll be breaking down those games a little later on in the week. And, of course, offering our Week 3 locks. This is Louie with Garage Game Day Sports signing off. Hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a listen. Let us know what you think. We appreciate any and all feedback. We love college football. We hope you guys do too. Anytime you want to shoot us a question too, feel free. Let us know. We'll be doing a mailbag question in the upcoming episodes. So, Louie with Garage Game Day Sports signing off. See you guys later in the week.